Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good
It's
to
such
see
a
you.
pleasure to see you, Sangeeta, although virtually. It's
Yes,
always a
yes.
pleasure to connect with you. And I informally wanted to thank you for taking some time out of your schedule and connecting with young adults. So
thank you
I
so
hope
much
it's
for
going to
this
be an interesting
opportunity.
session. Fantastic. So
I
I
hope
think
so.
we'll start. Yeah. So I think, girls, I'm sure you've given up your questions because unless there are questions, the session tends to slip into a little bit of lack of energy. So make the most of these sessions that are unfolding now at Mahadevi Birla World Academy. And I hope we'll start on time. And I hope today it'll be a very fruitful session. So, Sangeeta, though there are a few of us joining on screen, there are a huge number of students who are connected on YouTube. So the only reason why we didn't want so many together on Zoom is because sometimes it creates disturbances and technical glitches and the video bandwidth, etc. is compromised. So the
Correct.
others are all live on YouTube and they'll be sending their messages through chat. And we would request you to also let us share your email ID with our students so that when they have doubts and queries, they can be in touch with you and they can, get them resolved by keeping in touch with you. So over to you. Ms. Kundu, if you're there to do the
Yes, ma'am.
honors,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think we'll start the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all of you. I welcome honored guests, respected principal ma'am, dear students and colleagues in the event of job shadowing. Experiential learning is an opportunity for learners to apply what they have been taught to solve real-world challenges. Job shadowing is one such method of experiential learning we have been organizing in our school for the past 4 years. Job shadowing is helping a student get a practical experience of a career they desire to pursue in future. We at Mahadevi Birla World Academy try our best to adapt and turn every challenge into an opportunity for our students. So, this exceptional year, we are conducting online sessions of job shadowing. Our honored guest, Mrs. Sangeeta Chatterjee, is having a diverse work experience in the field of PR, communication, and mental health, and is been presently associated with IIHM. She has also worked in the Indian classical music industry as a freelance journalist, has been the editor of a music magazine, and also handled awareness campaigns on behalf of organizations where she needed to work with children. Ma'am, you're having diverse work experiences in various fields. It will be really nice that if you could share your thought process and your experiences with our children. Our respected principal, ma'am, Mrs. Anjana Shah, ma'am, is also there with us today. Ma'am, I'm requesting you if you can share some words with us.
I think I've already said a lot because Sangeeta is known to me and I've had a lot of pleasure in my association with her, both professionally and whatever I know of her as a person. She's a beautiful person. I think she was the force behind the Food Soldier initiative that IIHM launched, and Mahadevi Birla World Academy supported the initiative through the Food ATF. The reason why we reached out to you, Ms. Chatterjee, or Sangeeta as I call you, is because I see you as somebody who has multitasked and worn several hats with Elan. When we speak about building competencies and skills, communication is a core skill. But with communication, there has to be critical thinking, there has to be analysis, there has to be logic. But more than anything else, there has to be compassion. And for me, you're a role model who has combined communication strategies, collaboration strategies. So it's not always about competing and being first in everything, being the forerunner in everything. Those who ran behind also ran. So for me, you are a role model because you combine the strengths of communication, collaboration, and compassion. So please do share your inputs, insights, and your experience with our students so they can learn to make choices for themselves, choices that are responsible and choices that are socially effective, for they are the leaders of a better tomorrow. Over to you, Sangeeta.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm flattered. I'm over the moon with such an amazing introduction. To be honest with you, I think this is the first time I'm getting to hear such nice things about myself. I hope I will meet your expectations. I'm going to start screen sharing, and just to let the IT support know that in case my screen gets frozen or something like that, I'll log out and then I'll log in again, and we will take this, with the flow. So just give me a moment. And can you see the first slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. So if you can just take a look at what I had written, this is the way I would like to describe myself. I'm a whining single mother, and I insist on being a fallible mom. I learn from my failures, and I think it is very important to learn from your failures. I crib a lot. I crib a lot. But I take actions after cribbing because I need to resolve issues. And yes, I cannot decide which one is my favorite, reading or sleeping. They are perpetually competing against each other, and I cannot tell you which one has won so far, but I have emerged a better person. I'm very lazy, yes, but then I do believe in the power of agency and in being a fiercely independent individual. I practice Buddhism and I believe in neuroscience. I think life has come full circle because of Buddhism and neuroscience. So before I start talking about the next slide, I want to tell you a little bit. I want to take you 15 years back when I had completed my master's degree in mass communication and journalism from the Calcutta University. Prior to that, I had completed my bachelor's degree in economics with economics major. And I got married very young. And I got a lot of job offers at that time. And what I'm going to tell you right now is not a shiny, glitzy, amazing story where I had, step after step, I have climbed up the corporate ladder or any kind of ladder for that matter. I want to share with you all the experiences that I've had, which have made me a better person. And as I unravel, you will get to know why I am talking, this is a job shadowing session. But then how my narrative relates to the job shadowing session, you'll slowly get to know as I unravel more facts about myself, my journey. So I got married very young, and that was the time when I also got my master's degree. I got a lot of job offers, attractive ones, from the leading English dailies at that time. But then I decided that, my sole focus at that time, because my husband was a musician, I wanted to work for him. Nothing was more important to me than his career. So I started liaising on his behalf. I started working as his manager. So, he was a musician who would travel internationally. So that gave me the opportunity to travel internationally. I traveled many countries, almost 25 countries, I think 24 or 25 countries. And I liaised with people. I negotiated contracts. I did all kinds of communication. I wrote emails. I looked after the publicity, because that was something which was very important to me at that point. And therefore, I did it very, very passionately. Okay. Now, when I say this, I also want to tell you something that also there was a lack of structure in the whole thing, because I was working from home, and it was a profession that goes and fits and starts. So of course you have to be self-disciplined. However, there was a certain lack of structure in the whole thing. So I continued with this. So loosely, if you can term the whole thing that I was doing at that point, could be named as public relations and the art of selling. Now, this is something which I hadn't really learned, but then I learned with experience. And I did this for almost 8 years. Side by side, I also continued freelancing as a journalist. So I kept writing about music, about lifestyle. I wrote about human interest stories, and I ended up writing in almost all the leading English dailies. And then I was also working from home along with my PR job for my husband. I was also working from home as a chief content editor for a music magazine. Well, the magazine was published from the United States of America. Now, that was a point in time when the country was also going through an economic downturn. In fact, the whole world was going through an economic downturn. 2 years of my job as the chief content editor of that magazine, the magazine closed, and I continued my work as a liaison, as a manager. This is a photograph which was taken in Kolkata, but in one of the auditoriums. But then this reminds me of another acumen that I acquired during my work as a musician's manager. So this was at the Sydney Opera House. There was no there was no master of ceremonies for that particular concert at the Sydney Opera House. And there was an Australian lady there who was not capable of pronouncing Indian names like Sangeeta, Chatterjee, and Rag, Kaushik, Dhwani, things like that. So she sort of gave up and she said, hey, I don't think I'll be able to pull this off on stage. So will you please just go on stage and announce and be the master of ceremonies for this concert? So it was sort of, I was pushed into the water, so to say. But then I didn't give up, and I went, and feedback has it that I did a good job there. And that instilled me the courage to go on stage and be a master of ceremonies. And that's where my journey as a master of ceremonies also started. So I was doing a lot of things, I was juggling a lot of things all together. Now, fast forward 8 years. This is in 2011. And here, like J.K. Rowling, I would say that I was an epic failure. I was the mother of a 1.5-year-old baby. I was going through a divorce, and I was in the middle of a devastation. I didn't know what to do. I was 31 years old, too old to be in the job market. I was practically, actually, technically not there in the job market. So to start off from scratch would be a big thing. I didn't know what to do. I was clueless, depressed, and the way forward looked bleak. So if I were to start from the beginning there, then my salary would be really less, in which case I wouldn't be able to support my kid. I wouldn't be able to give him a good life. Now, here is the paradox of the situation that I went through. If the hours were challenging, if the hours of work was challenging, then the salary would be good, but then I would have no time to take care of my kid. And if the hours wouldn't be challenging, then the salary would be like peanuts. So, it was a paradox, and I just didn't know what to do about it. But then I had to wade through the waters. You cannot give up, so you have to go on. So I joined a private firm as a PR manager. It was the hours weren't so challenging, and the salary was okay. Okay, it was okay to get by. And my journey started as a professional once again. So I sort of, I was stripped of everything. I was sort of living in a bubble, and the bubble suddenly burst. And then I had to start off from a scratch. Everything changed. Everything around me changed. People changed. Their attitudes changed. And I was wading through the waters. I didn't know which direction I was heading to, but then I knew I had to go on. But then no direction, no passion, no happiness, nothing. In the meantime, there is a friend of mine who one day he was having a chat with me and he said, "Hey, Sangeeta, why don't you do this? You think you are the saddest person in this world? Okay, so let me give you this address." And he gave me an address. It was somewhere in Howrah. And he said, "You go visit this place. You go visit the people who are associated with this place. Find out what kind of a life they lead. Find out how privileged you are." Now, a lot of people, the moment I say this, a lot of people would think that, so the next step I would take is I go, I meet these underprivileged people, and then my life changes, my thought process changes, and everything changes overnight. But that didn't happen. Actually, I wasn't even thinking anything at that point. I just thought, okay, this friend has suggested me something. Let me go. Let me just go and see what happens. So it was, I think, a sense of adventure, which I've always had from my childhood, that sort of propelled me to go there. It is an NGO in Howrah. And I went there, and that day I met about 70 children. 70 children. Okay, let's go to the next slide. When I met those children, yes, we did a few activities. And then when I came back home, that day I thought, let me just make a list of the things that I love to do. Because I realized that whatever work I was doing at that point. Now, so here is the difference, you see. When I was working for my husband, I had a purpose. I had passion in me. And so I was working with a lot of passion. I was doing the right things, and it was with a lot of focused energy. But then post-divorce, you're depressed, you're with a child, you don't know which way you're going, everything is uncertain. So it is quite, I just didn't know what I was doing. So, but then at the same time, I wanted to find out what are the things that I love to do? What are the things that stimulate my passion? What are the things that drive me? So I made a list, and this is what the list looked like. Quilling, crafting from waste materials, writing or blogging, singing, reading, making hand-painted jewelry, and being a master of ceremonies. Now, if you look at this list carefully, you will understand that most of the things here cannot be done and so that you may earn a living. If you look very carefully through what I had put down in the list. So say, for example, you take singing. If I were to become a singer, I cannot become famous or I cannot become successful overnight. So if reading, I don't know. I don't even know what to do with it. At that point, I didn't even know what to do with it. Okay. Making hand-painted jewelry. Well, I did a few things in this regard, but then I realized there's a lot of investment that is required, and I didn't have the money. And master of ceremonies, again, that's something where, this is a profession which it's not a job. So it's not a stable source of income, and that's what I exactly needed. But then what I realized is these things which I was capable of doing, converting anything which otherwise anybody would just throw away into a trash bin. I was capable of creating magic out of them, things like this. things like this, And this is a sample of my hand-painted jewelry. Now, I must also tell you here that I also did get the opportunity through some friends, very kind friends, to make hand-painted jewelry for some very popular television soaps. There were very kind actors who had endorsed my jewelry in their social media and things like that. But then again, all of this fizzled out because it wasn't a stable source of income. It required a lot of investment, which I was not capable of making. And so I realized that those favorite things, all of my favorite things, they're not enough for me to, they're not enough to make a solid foundation for me to earn a living out of. And at that point, that realization put me into a lot of sadness because I thought, oh my God, does that mean that I shall never be able to do the things that I love to do? Does that mean that I'll have to throw away all my passion and just lead a dull and drab life like this? How can I live my life devoid of passion? These are the questions that kept haunting me. However, I couldn't give up. The job went on the way it had to go on. And my visit to these areas where underprivileged people live in Kolkata, my visits increased. The frequency of my visits increased. I started visiting them almost every weekend. And what I experienced during these visits is a shared joy of creation. I discovered that, I really had to restructure my way of communicating, the way I would communicate. There is a certain way that you need to communicate in a boardroom meeting or with professionals or with colleagues. However, communicating with people, from this strata of the society, this section of the society, required very, very special skills. And this is not something which a book will teach you. This is something which you have to go there and learn for yourself. What I experienced with these children is bonding. I was happy with them. I saw in them this indomitable spirit. I saw that they had the capability to smile, to laugh, to make fun of things. Can you imagine? These children made this lamp out of an empty cereal box, some newspapers, and these Christmas lights. That's it. That's all they used, And I didn't have to spend a lot of time giving them any instructions, which means they were so intelligent, so intelligent. It was like I would look at them and within a glimpse, they would just figure out what to do and they would improvise. So it was not just a platform where I was teaching them things, where I was, it was a skill exchange program. I was learning how to communicate, how to touch their hearts, how to get inside their lives, how to just sort of, get into their brain stem cells and draw out all those feelings of happiness, all those feelings of deprivation, all those feelings of longing that they had. And this is what I learned during my visits to these slums. I continued this without any sense of, I didn't expect anything out of these visits at that time, However, what it did was, it had a parallel effect on the job or the jobs that I was into. So, one opportunity after the other came by and, I kept changing jobs. So let me share my screen once again. And yes, this is also something that we ended up creating. Can you believe this? So these are rag pickers' children, and they used to have a lot of these bottles stored in their, they would collect these bottles from dumps. Some of them lived in dumps where these would be readily available. They would wash them, clean them, and this is what we used to make together. And this shared joy of creation, this shared joy of being able to create a bonding with these people and to understand their lives, that sort of gave me the vitality and the lifeblood to go on. My job at that point was boring, or so I thought. But then what I started to do, what had started to happen, which I didn't realize at that time, which I realize now, is that I started to apply these values at my workplace, these values that I had been able to inculcate in during the course of my interactions with these people. So it was not just the children that I was interacting with, I was interacting with their parents. I was talking to them. I became a good listener. They started coming and telling me all their problems. And listening is a skill which then I realized is as important as talking. And where did I learn that? I learned that in the slums of Kolkata, in those little alleyways, in those little hutments, in those little accommodations which were sort of made of probably throwaway flex, some plastic material and things like that. Little hovels where these families used to stay. That's where I learned how to be a good listener. Moving on to the next slide. Opportunity after opportunity knocked my door. So I changed one job from one job to the other. I got into the trade and industry development sector, where I had worked for the Taiwan government. I had worked as a business development officer, and I was promoting trade relations between India and Taiwan. I was doing accountancy, which I never thought I was capable of. But the reason I was able to accomplish this, a very hardcore kind of jobs, which were not really my subject, is because I got the inspiration from the social interactions that I had started to make. Okay. Now, I know this slide intrigues you because this is a sort of a, huge change from the last slide. This was in 2015 when I was going through a very, very challenging period of my life. My child was going through, a lot of, I'm not saying that he wasn't cared for. He was cared for by his grandparents. He was cared for by me. However, he was also going through his own psychological struggles. And unfortunately, I also had to fight a very tough custody battle at that time. And I was fighting it all alone. Now, I needed to show the court that I was spending enough time with my child. And the only thing that came to my mind at that point was that I need a job in a school. And that's all I thought about. I don't have a degree. I don't have a B.Ed. I don't have a degree in education. But then my sole focus was to find a job in a school, and I didn't know how. But my prayers got answered. A friend of mine, she referred me to one of the best, one of the most premier schools in Kolkata. It's a girls' school. And I walked into the interview not knowing what the interview was about. Okay, I just assumed, it was some kind of a teaching job. And I thought, because I had, by then I was confident that I have good communication skills. So I just walked into the interview room and I sat there. And so, I was looking at my interviewer, who happened to be the principal and the headmistress of the school. And I was smiling at them very amiably and trying to be humble and at the same time apprehensive. I don't know what kind of questions they would throw at me. And as luck would have it, I got to know that they were interviewing me for the post of a librarian. Now, I'm a reader, of course. And that's when there was sort of, this thing went over the back of my mind. And I thought, okay. And I told myself, okay, Sangeeta, you can do it. You are a book reader. You love reading books. Just give it your best shot. So that's what I did. And I, of course, cracked the interview. And then I joined the school as a librarian. However, I must tell you something, that I am somebody, so by then I was already 36 years old. And, I know classics. I've read classics. I've read Enid Blyton. I have read E.B. White. But then I wasn't really very updated with the recent plethora of books that were there in the children's library. So I realized that I need to update my software. Okay. So what I did at that point was, within 6 months of being into my job, I finished reading each and every book, almost each and every book in that library. Okay. Now, this is also a point where I must tell you this is very important for me to share here, that apart from becoming a storyteller to the children, there was something very important, a very, very important step that I took in my life. And that was, I pulled myself out of every social media platform. I realized that I cannot be on dopamine driven loops. I cannot be on short-term shiny triggers anymore. I needed to be completely focused. I needed my energies completely directed. I wanted to give my all to this job. I wanted to direct all my energies, and I wanted to make a difference in my workplace. So I pulled myself out of every social media platform, and I concentrated on my job. I finished reading almost every book in that library within 6 months. Not just that, I was given so much of liberty in my job. My creativity was sort of so much indulged and supported by the school that I also became an elocution and public speaking teacher. So I started teaching the students public speaking. Now, mind you, I cannot show you photographs of myself from that era, from that period of my life, simply because I was not on social media. So I wasn't also using my smartphone to take pictures. So I hardly have any photographic memory of that period of my life. But I can tell you something, that this is one period of my life which I was going through very difficult. I was going through a very difficult time. The struggles were huge. There were court dates. I had to go to the police station again and again. There were repeated court dates, and it is very difficult to appear in a court of law where you are being accused and blamed every day in front of people whom you don't even know, and where your identity as a mother is being questioned. It was all very difficult. But this period of my life is still that period where I experienced the maximum amount of growth, because I was reading, because I had detached myself of, my RAM was not being used in these unnecessary activities, if I can put it that way. My RAM was completely engaged in productive activities, in activities which led to self-growth, and which led to activities which made a difference in the lives of others. So there was a lot of creativity and liberty that I got out of that job. And then moving on from my school job as a librarian, I got a better opportunity in the Indian Plastics Federation. Now, this is when I had to come back to the social media again, because there were, I was required to make posts on the social media. So I have photographic memories from that period in my life. Now, just look at the poetic beauty of this period of my life. Indian Plastics Federation. So that meant that I needed to work with schools, I needed to work with organizations, with clubs, with adults, with children. But most importantly, I had to work with the rag pickers community, because I was essentially working in waste management. Now, the first thing that I needed to do was, again, enlighten myself, be open-minded, adapt, and learn everything about waste management. So I learned that waste plastic can be used in the construction of roads, which can last for almost 8 to 10 years. That can lead to the strongest infrastructure of a country. It can lead to bringing down the costs of road making from 100% to 40%. I interacted, I took lessons, I interacted with some of the leading scientists of our country. And within a month, I became so well-versed in waste management that I started giving presentations, I started making presentations, and I ended up reaching to 20,000 students all over Bengal. I went and I spoke to them, and I also interacted with the rag pickers community, because by that time I already knew them. So it was sort of, I knew you may say 50% of the community, but because of this job at the Indian Plastics Federation, I ended up knowing almost 90% of the rag pickers community with whom I could work closely, I could understand more, and my respect for them increased manifold. Now, there was this point when I was going to them as a helper, and this was the point when I was going to them to be helped. And trust me, when I came across these women, some of these women from the rag pickers community, I was amazed to see how empowered they were. I was amazed to see how independent they were. You know, this is the place where I learned that independence actually is here. It's not external, it's completely here. These women inspired me. These women empowered me. And strange as it may sound, you know, I'm the educated one here. I'm the one who has traveled so many countries. I'm the one who is exposed to so much. But then the grit and the determination that I saw in the eyes and the actions of these ladies was amazing. This is something that I can never forget in my life. This has actually helped me, these interactions helped me undergo my own human revolution, which helped me come to a very nice, amiable, beautiful understanding with my opponents in the court. And the custody battle for my son was resolved. I retained my son still lives with me, but we share a happy relationship with all those people who had, you know, who had dragged me to the court, so to say. There was a point in time when I was feeling so bitter about them, but it is after my interactions with these women, when I saw their grit, when I saw their determination, it is because of these little conditionings that I had had through my interactions with them that I was able to resolve within myself that, you know, I need a quality life. I'll be hardworking. I will do everything. I'll put my everything in everything that I do. I have to be open-minded. I have to be flexible. Most importantly, I have to undergo my transformation as a human being, because if I do not change as a human being, there is no point, you know, if I cannot get a peaceful night's sleep, no amount of money, or even if I have a Mercedes in my garage, is going to get me a peaceful night's sleep. So this is what these women taught me. I'm going to go back to my screen sharing once again. And here I want to show you a collage of photographs, beautiful memories, interactions of mine with some of the premier schools in Kolkata, some of the most important institutions, where I also went and learned so much from the children, you know. Now cut to IIHM. My next job was IIHM. I joined the International Institute of Hotel Management as a counselor for students, for parents, as an academic counselor. I was working for admissions. I was working in strategizing marketing for the institution. I was working in the admissions department. I was also sometimes taking classes in communicative English. Now, this is the place where I was entrusted with this amazing project initiative called Food Soldier. Now, this is a project which again took me back to the rag pickers community. Now, can you just imagine the poetic beauty of the whole thing? There was this list that I had shown you, you know, and I saw that list 8 years ago in my life. And I thought, oh my God, how can I monetize this list? It is impossible to monetize a list like that. Quilling, crafting, making things out of, you know, waste material. How can I monetize these things? You know, I could participate in an exhibition for sure, but then how will I put food on the table by doing such things? I need a stable source of income. I need passion. I need something to stimulate me, something to motivate me, something which gives me a purpose in life. And just, you know, I ended up doing a lot of things without any expectation. But then I was honest in whatever I did. When I was in the slum with the children, I was honest. When I was at my workplace, I was honest. And it was this interchange of values and the intermingling of values that happened in both these places that led to this amazing project, and I was heading this, and it also became, one of the jewels in the crown of our institution. This is also a place where I ended up making amazing bonds with my students, with so many other communities which I hadn't reached out to in the past. This was a place, and I'm sure you recognize this school uniform, this amazing, honorable symbol, which is the Mahadevi Birla World Academy School. This is also the project which made me come to your school. I interacted with Mrs. Saha, one of the most amazing people I've met. Energetic, vibrant, wanting to do things. She believes in doing. And that's where we joined hands. And this is a photograph which was taken sometime during the month of September last year. This girl, she lives in the Topsia slum, and she's brilliant with her studies. Her mother is a rag picker, earns about 60 to 70 rupees per day. And Mrs. Saha actually very kindly offered to sponsor her staples, the staples for her mother and for her for a year, so that whatever money they would earn could be spent in her education. So she was so kind to come ahead and take this step. And I should tell you this, that she's still supporting, her name is Shabnam. She's still supporting Shabnam. And, I have all my respects for her, for being the first person, in fact, in our Food Soldier initiative to take this initiative and to show an example, to set an example to the rest of the world. It is actually after this step that Mrs. Saha took that we started getting these requests from other schools from all over the city. It is after this step that she took that we started getting phone calls. We started getting so many, all these people, they were calling us and they were showing their eagerness to be part of this project. And so we are very, very, very thankful to her for joining us, for joining hands with us, and being an example to the whole world. This was the poster of the Food Soldier initiative. So long and short of it, if you look at my career path, you can see that it was very, very non-linear, So I didn't join a particular place, or I didn't join a particular profession. So I didn't become a journalist and I became a sub-editor, then the editor, and then this, that, and then probably the chief editor. I didn't follow a particular line, so to say, because I couldn't, because I had a son to take care of. I had my other priorities. However, I couldn't give up. I needed that driving force. I needed passion. I needed a fulfilling job. And that's what became my guiding light in this entire journey. So long and short of it is I had a non-linear career path, but then it was a fulfilling one. And it has been a fulfilling one so far. It has been full of passion. It has been full of personal growth. There has never been a moment that I have thought that, okay, I'm stagnating, or I'm not being able to communicate, or I'm not able to understand a certain thing, or there's a certain issue which is totally new and I don't want to take it up. I developed the flexibility because of these changes that happened continuously, and because of the open mind that I had. Even during this pandemic, I am not scared, because I know I am capable of doing so much. Because I have an open mind, because I'm flexible, I'm capable of adapting. And most importantly, there has been a continued growth in my salary despite the economic downturn in the last 10 years. I have been able to add value to people's lives. So overall, it was a gain for me, not just spiritually, not just personally, but also financially. So you can call this sort of a career path. It may not be the, the oft trodden career path. It's not something which is very usual. However, it is something which propels you towards continuous growth. And I would still like to call myself a student. And I still would like to say that I'm learning, and I'm still eager to learn, continue to learn from everybody, from every element. Live every day of my life as if there's no tomorrow. That is what this entire journey has taught me. Thank you very much. If you have questions, I guess you will have to raise a hand, and then the admin, the IT will unmute you, or whichever way you want to take it, ma'am.
Students, if you have any questions, please ask. Ma'am, I just want to say thank you, ma'am. Really, it's like a long journey you had and a struggle life also. But again, I think we have also learned something from you. Our students have also learned.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
ma'am. It was
Avni, you raised your hand. Avni and then Ashi.
Okay, Avni.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
You're so inspiring, and it has been extremely wonderful to learn about what you have done. And my question to you is that in this pandemic situation, how do we balance our positive and negative emotions? Considering that most of the time we are facing more of the negative emotions. Thank you, ma'am.
May I ask you, why are you facing the negative emotions?
Ma'am, because firstly, we are staying in this enclosed space. We are not being able to go to school. And this is our last year. So we are missing that experience more. So because of these things, these negative emotions are increasing.
Okay. So here again, I would like to draw a reference to what I had learned from the rag pickers community, the women especially. So, the human beings go through two kinds of stresses. One is an immobilization stress. Okay. So immobilization stress is the kind of stress where, there is this, so we are going through it right now. Okay, we can't go anywhere. We need to wear a face mask. We need to, cover ourselves, wear gloves and things like that. Okay, the other stress is called predatorial stress. Predatorial stress is something which, so if I go out, somebody will kill me, that fear. So yes, our mind has been influenced, conditioned with these both kinds of stresses at the moment. Now, the beauty of knowing that is, it is also important for you to understand that your mind will play a lot of tricks upon you. This is a year which has immobilized you physically. Has it immobilized you mentally? See, there's so much of freedom inside. It is very much possible to sit at home, heal, treat this as something which is very different, and invest your time, most importantly, because this time will never come back. Invest your time in growth. Again, I am drawing another reference from this journey that I had shown you. When I was working in the school, I withdrew from social media. I withdrew out of willingness because, the school gave me a sense of purpose. The books gave me a sense of purpose, and I wanted to do my best. You have to understand that the economy is also going through a downturn. Next year, it will be even worse. Okay. So you have to be prepared for the worst. And therefore, you have to prepare yourself for the worst. Because once the economy bounces back, there will be this 20% of people who will start getting jobs. You have to work in a manner, develop your skills with flexibility and adaptability right now. Right now you cannot have hard and fast rules कि मुझे यही करना है और मुझे यही बनना है. No, you need to change your thought process. And see, for me, I never had to change my thought process. For me, it has been like the pandemic all along. Always in the middle of constraints, always in the middle of struggles, always having to find solutions, always so many obstacles. Okay, so if you look at it that way, then you have to develop yourself to a point right now, so that when the economy goes through an upturn, there will be this 20% of people who will be absorbed into the industry, and you want to be that first 20%. Prepare yourself with that in your mind, and there can be no better time to do that but right now. I hope I have answered your question satisfactorily.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
The next question was from, we had another question.
I think Ashi wanted to ask something. Ashi, you raised your hand.
Good evening, ma'am. Firstly, it's a pleasure to meet you, be it virtually, and to know about your life experiences. So thank you so much for conducting this session. Secondly, I wanted to ask you about one piece of advice that you would like to give us youngsters who are going to have these diverse experiences and who want to pursue the same like you.
One piece of advice for people who would like to take the same kind of journey that I have taken in my career. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. When you are faced with obstacles, always look at the possibilities. Always look at the possibilities. I mean, the obstacle, for all you know, could be a springboard to another possibility. And trust me, more than 99% of times, it is. You just need to be able to see it. Have you read this story by Roald Dahl? It's called The Minpins. There's this line, there's this sentence which comes at the end of this story, which has always inspired me. I read a lot of books on neuroscience. I read a lot of that because, I forgot to tell you that when I was working in the school, my interactions with the children enriched me so much that I wanted to know more about them. So I went and I also got a post-graduation degree in mental health and family therapy from one of the best universities in the city. So I used to go do evening classes, so that was an additional feather that I was able to put into my hat and I was really craving. So I read a lot of these books on emotional intelligence and neuroscience and things like that. But some of the best books in which neuroscience is the best integrated in the disguise of stories is children's books. And there's this wonderful line that appears in this story, Minpins. This is the last line, actually, which says, miracles are everywhere. You just need to look for them. You need to have the eyes to look for them. And also, most importantly, something that I have had all along is I have believed. I have believed. Now, in that process, you may think that you may be wondering, what have I believed in, right? So I have believed in honesty. There have been times when people have come and told me things which were a lie, but I had innocently taken them on face value. But you know what? I'm not ashamed of that, because it's not my problem that I was lied to. Okay. When I was working in the rag pickers community, I'm not saying that I had a completely, rosy experience. There were times when I was misinformed. I had to go, and there were areas, where there were these illegal plastic manufacturers, and, that they had a gun in their hand. I had to face these situations, but then I walked through them simply because probably they thought I'm a gullible person. I came across as a stupid person, which is fine. It helped. So always believe in possibilities. मैं बुद्धू हूं तो मेरा वो बुद्धू होना मेरे लिए खराब है. No, it's a trait. It's a package. It's a part of you. And sometimes it can be put to good use. Okay, so I have believed in others. I have believed in myself. I have believed in the positive. I have believed that, if I go to bed every night and I wake up in the morning and there's a beautiful sunrise and, everything, and life goes on. Even in this pandemic, life goes on. There's so much that we are able to accomplish. If this is possible, then it obviously means that the universe is always moving towards a positive direction. You just need to align yourself with it. So this is something that I would always tell you, that never give up hope. Never give up hope. And never let anyone push you into an esteem crisis. There should be no esteem crisis in your life. Whatever you are a package with all your shortcomings, with all your, I can do this, I cannot do this, I can cook, I cannot cook, I'm a good sprinter, I'm lazy, whatever it is, just learn to celebrate every quality that you have in you, and also learn to laugh at the things that are worth laughing about. Probably that will help you embrace and accept yourself the way you are, and take positive steps in your life. Because the important thing is not to just earn a fat salary, because you will, if you get a if you get a very well paid job, very good, but then what if you don't like the job? Because there is this thing about one's career that we do not learn in schools and colleges. There are these two aspects to a career. One is outcome, one is consequences. So if you study law, you will become, the outcome is you'll become a lawyer. If you study medical science, you will become a doctor, right? That is the outcome. But if you become a doctor, what will be the consequences? Are you ready to face the consequences? What kind of things will fulfill your life and make those consequences meaningful? Are these consequences meaningful? No. Go back home. Write down what is meaningful to you. Are these consequences meaningful to you? Then you're in the right path.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That truly answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Ishika, you have raised your hand. Ishika Agarwal, you have raised your hand.
Good evening, ma'am, and I must thank you for doing this for us and for this session, because it has really helped me understand myself in a different way, and I've discovered new things about myself through your perspective. My question is very simple, and I heard you speak about how you also took time to adjust with who you were as a person and discovering who you are. And at the stage that we are in, we're going to be making some very complex decisions very soon, decisions which will then shape our future. But something I personally struggle with, which is why I'm asking you this, is how do we really become more comfortable with who we are as a person, and how do we evolve? So how do I really, and there are times when I can't really I can't I try to be not very hard on myself, but it just happens because of the circumstances. And you've been through some really hard times. So how do you advise that we all try to be a little less hard on ourselves? Because at the end of the day, it's about discovering your potential. So how do you think can we do that as young adults?
As young adults, the first step is to accept. If you have made a mistake, if you have spoken like a fool somewhere, if you have embarrassed yourself, the first step is to accept, because, and this is a very scientific process. Okay, this is not just a jargon I'm sharing with you. It's a very scientific. The moment you accept, the next step will be change. Then from the next step onwards, change will begin. If you do not accept, the struggle will continue. So if you have made a fool of yourself somewhere, if you have embarrassed yourself somewhere by saying something, take a deep breath, accept, and then you will see, you will be able to laugh about it. Self-deprecating humor. Yeah? Does that help?
I do that a lot. I do that most of the time.
You're on the right path. Sometimes it takes time, but that's okay. That's perfectly okay. Koi rule book thoda hi na hai. There's no rule book. So you take your time, accept, and move on. Accepting your shortcomings is one of the greatest challenges, because, when you think about the good things, it's easy. Or when you want to tell, when you want to introduce a friend, not just yourself, you want to introduce a friend, and you want to talk only about the friend's good things, it's very easy. But can you introduce a friend of yours? Try doing this. Can you introduce a friend of yours to an audience, okay, where you are talking about the good things as well as the bad things? Now you are to say the bad things very artfully here. How will you say them? Will you say them in a manner so that your friend falls into an esteem crisis? No, you don't want that. But how do you want it? You tell me. How will you describe the not so nice things about your friend?
You add a little bit of humor, and even when you're criticizing someone, I think you can always be you can always be respectful in the way you give back feedback. So if I am describing my friend's shortcomings, I would always want the friend to be comfortable. Maybe I'll take consent. I'll ask them that this is how I'm going to describe you, and please be okay with it. And be respectful in the criticism you give people, because I think it makes it more easy for the person to accept it as well if you state it in a lucid manner. So I think that's what I do.
Beautiful. So I'll take two keywords from what you said. You said respectful, and you also said, what was this other word that you said? Describe my friend. Can you just repeat once again?
I said that I'd always be respectful with the criticism I provide, and I'd always take
yeah,
consent,
okay.
maybe
Yeah,
take
I got it. So I will take out the word criticism from there, and you used a wonderful word, which is feedback. So you give a feedback and you give it respectfully, you know, and if you pepper it with humor, nothing like it. They will fall in love with you. Even so, you know, you're just imagine you're describing the shortcomings of a friend to an audience, and your friend loves you for that. Right? So try doing that. It will actually enhance your ability to use keywords. It will make you more careful in the way you use your keywords. Try that with a family member who will not get angry with you, maybe with your mother. Okay? Try doing that. That's a good exercise.
I think it was so beautifully expressed, Sangeeta. I've been listening. The beginning of your speech, I was there for about 20-25 minutes, and then I left and went to the other session, and then there was a third session happening, and then I came back here. I think what you've given the students today is so much of not only skills, but there's goodness that shines through. And I really feel, as a leader, as an educator, as a human being, if that goodness is there at the core of your being, everything else falls in place. If you have resilience, goodness, and positivity, and this morning we were talking about a poem which is all about acceptance. And with that acceptance, you move on. We were talking about John Donne. Some of them are in my class. We were talking about metaphysical poetry, and we were talking about acceptance. That is the building block of resilience and, acceptance just the way you are. And then moving on and loving the person despite the flaws. You learn to do that. And like you said, humor really helps in seeing things from the right perspective. And I feel also detachment. When you're this close, things get blurred. You get angry. But as you move away, when you say we'll get back to you, you're actually giving yourself time and giving the other person time to think about it.
Delay tactics.
Yes, delay tactics. So I always use that. Whenever there is something which, people are festering and there's a huge argument happening and staff room politics is happening, I'll always say, let me get back. Very tired today. Let me get back to you. Because immediately that 24 hours is a cooling process.
Yes.
And then we feel so foolish about saying stupid things and losing our temper. Because by then you feel, is it really important? Was it really necessary? How foolish have we been to quibble over something that doesn't matter at all?
Yes, exactly.
So I think putting things in perspective. Yeah,
vulnerability is also a very, very, it is a very embarrassing, it is something which is like a swamp land where you enter, মানে অনেক বৃষ্টি হয়ে একটা জায়গায় অনেক দিন ধরে বৃষ্টি হয়ে কাদা হয়ে আছে, ওইখানে গেলেই পা আটকে যাবে. Vulnerability is something like that. But then vulnerability is also something which is the bedrock of creativity. It is the bedrock of love.
Absolutely. You have to be able to show your vulnerability to the person that you're close to, or maybe it cannot happen professionally. In the professional circles, it's best not to. But there will be times when you need to unwind. And if you have that one corner where you can, If you have that one space which is non-judgmental, well then
Yes.
the job is there for you, and
Very
you are there for
relevant point that you have made here, ma'am. And so I would also like to conclude by saying, Avni had asked me this question, and during the pandemic, a lot of people tend to ask this question. So mental health is going to be a big
challenge.
issue during and post pandemic. Now, we have a first aid when we get injured, when we're playing in the field, or something happens at home, there's a cut or a bruise, we have a first aid kit. Now, what is the first aid kit when it comes to mental health? Can anyone tell me? Any of the students? What is the first aid kit when it comes to mental health? Okay, I'll not take any more time. So,
Ma'am, I think Ishika has raised her hand.
Okay,
Ishika has raised her hand.
Yes.
I think communication is definitely a part of the first aid kit when it comes to mental health.
Yes, you got it. You got it right there. I'll add one more thing to it. Communication with a person with whom you feel safe.
Exactly.
Non-judgmental person.
Non-judgmental. So naturally, if the person is non-judgmental, you'll feel safe, isn't it? So ensure that during this journey, during the pandemic, remember that if you are going through a low phase, if you have this anxiety attack or anything, remember that you immediately need to go and talk it over with a person whom you can trust the most, who will not judge you and is your safe zone. Okay? That's very, very important. Thank you so much.
Ashi, you have raised your hand. Ashi, you want to ask something to ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so you said that communication is definitely very important. But ma'am, is it also not important to communicate our problems to somebody who has the ability to comprehend them and help us out with them?
Ashi, yes. Yes and no. Sometimes, have you been through a process where you have just emptied yourself out? Do you want to be heard? So when you're talking to me, so for example, there's something that you want to tell me, you come and start talking to me about it. And, I'm continuously bouncing back whatever you're telling me. Now, this is one thing. The other thing that I can always do is only listen so that you can empty yourself out, because you need to, so it's like a yarn, there's several yarns tangled inside your head. As you communicate, you yourself are actually going through the process of untangling those strands from that, 3 or 4 yarns, which are sort of like this, and you're laying it out. And this is a very, very important process. It will mentally relax you. It will de-stress you.
I think sometimes just to listen, sometimes just to, it's like what she said, unraveling of thoughts. When the thoughts are all contorted, and I have gone through this when the lockdown started, because I'm saying this today openly because Sangeeta is a friend and my children here are my friends as well. And I'm not afraid to be vulnerable in front of them. I have the courage to say what I feel. That initially I felt I'm completely lost, because here is this 4,000 plus strong school who's looking at me for direction. What now?
You need to sit somewhere and lick your wounds. You're a tiger.
I had no answers initially.
Yeah.
It is sometimes, like they say, it's very lonely at the top.
Yes.
It is very lonely at the top. Yeah. But thankfully, if you have a release mechanism, whatever it may be, whether it's music or friends or adda or whatever it is, you have to have that to be happy as a professional. You cannot keep carrying that baggage. And slowly the answers come. And for me, you have to find a time when your thought process is most active and most fertile. For me, it's in the late hours of the night, early hours of the morning. That's when all the bright ideas come. Very early, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, ping, and then I have that notebook and everyone says, what is wrong with you? Why are you up in the middle of the night? What are you writing? We've gone mad. And that's when I know it's trouble for teachers and students the next morning, because that alarm has gone off in my head. So whether it's the Dil Se Adda or whether it's the Pujo Adda, it's all about, girls, you realize it's all about unwinding. Because you may not always unwind with that teacher in the class, but I am trying to provide you several other platforms where you can meet even this session. I don't know how many of you will follow in our footsteps where the job is concerned, but at least you've had an interesting evening talking about so many things that we wouldn't have spoken about. So I think we will conclude on this note. And Sangeeta, you know, you have my adulation, my love, my respect. We work together, and anything that you need, we're just a phone call away. Keep being one of our well-wishers and a friend to the MBWA family. God bless you, and may you have many more successes in your journey. Thank you, girls. Thank you, teachers. And I'll take your leave. Good evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the honor.